Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be looking at a tier list that is designed by Zapdos TCG, big shout out to him, on what we think is going to be the most popular decks and the highest chances to win the Pokemon TCG 2023 World Championships in Yokohama, Japan. So as you can see here down below, we obviously got the different tiers. S, the most dominant deck in the format. 1, 2, 3, and don't play this. And then obviously the decks here. Right now, I think what we can say for sure is that there isn't a tier S deck, as there is no deck in this format that's as dominant as Lugia V-Star Archeops was back when it was the Sword and Shield to Silver Tempest or the Sword and Shield to Crown Zenith format. There is no deck that was as dominant as Lugia V-Star Archeops in this format, right? There's going to be a lot in Tier 1 and Tier 2, right? And, a little bit in Tier 3 and a little bit in Don't Play This. So, for example, I think, a deck that we can kind of all agree on to be in Tier 1 would be Arceus Giratina, right? It's super consistent, has Path to the Peak in the deck, and shut down different, obviously ability lock decks. It's got Judge and Iono, which is awesome. Giratina, probably the strongest V-Star in the game, capable of hitting that 280, which knocks out pretty much everything in the format, barring VMAXs, when you slap a Choice Belt on or a Cleansing Gloves in that list, right? It'll knock out the Gardevoir EX and the Mew VMAX, easily, right? So the other thing too with this is that it gives you the option of using Star Requiem, but you're obviously not going to be able to get the cards required in the Lasso. If you for instance, if you decide to maybe put a few Colress's Experiment in there, right? Maybe just change it up from the regular Arctina to a different Arctina. And then you can maybe get off that Star Requiem, but you're typically going to be using that Lost Impact. I've been seeing a lot of this, a lot of these decks play Umbreon as well to counter the Gardevoir matchup and the Mew matchup, and that's why I think this is Tier 1 and perhaps the best deck in the format. I'm also going to put Lost Tina in here, right? Just because, it doesn't really have any bad matchups. It doesn't get hit for weakness. It has the locking there, with Path to the Peak. It does have Star Requiem. Star Requiem followed by a Lost Impact on your opponent's two most important Pokemon is crazy. That's going to be really, really tough to beat. Obviously, it's got, Sableye in there and Cramorant, a little bit of chip damage and some sniping, here and there, right? It's very consistent too, right? With obviously the Comfy engine, Battle VIP Pass, and Colress's Experiment. I think these two are definitely Tier 1. Comes down to preference. Shadow Rider here, I'm going to put in Don't Play This. Just because of really the damage output. It takes a long time to get any considerable damage into play with this. It's not a Turbo Darkrai build. It doesn't have a Dark Patch in it. It doesn't have a Galarian Moltres V, right? And, even though you have the other things in it, right? You know, Battle VIP and Nest Ball, right? It just doesn't have those other things, and you know, it also gets shut down by Path to the Peak. So it's definitely on a don't playlist. Darkrai, on the other hand, I'm gonna put in. It could be tier 2, right? I've been seeing a lot of lists play. You know, it's like a Turbo Darkrai, and I would say that this here, depending on how much Gardevoir and Mew are being played, this could be an underdog. It's crazy fast. You know, I've seen, you know, 5-6 energy turn ones, right? And when you're getting that much energy into play consistently on that very first turn, you're going to be going for huge knockouts, right? And, you know, it's kind of susceptible to Path to the Peak, right? But it's kind of not as well because, you know, it affects pretty much everything except Darkrai. Like, you don't need Star Abyss to win games. You just need to attack with it, right? But the Galarian Moltres V, you know, Squawkabilly, right? It's been playing Squawkabilly, right? Radiant Greninja, right? That's kind of what it affects, right? The other thing, too, is Grass right now is a very good weakness to have, as Grass is not being played as much, and Dark is a great typing to have. You know, obviously for, like I said, Mew and Gardevoir. Right. Speaking of grass, you know, we've got a couple grass decks. I'm going to put this one here, Fortress and Wo-Chien, and don't play this. It's a neat deck. You know, it's grass is, you know, hits. It doesn't hit for weakness on a lot of things. It hits it on, you know, Tyranitar V, Darkrai V, right? But the biggest thing is it gives prizes, right? Fortress blows itself up, gives 2 prizes for you to get a knockout, for only your opponent to respond, to take 2 prizes off of you, right? And then all they need to do is just hit another 2 prizer, then it's a good game, right? Now, sure, you do have, you know, Iono and Path to the Peak, you know, but if they can establish a good setup, right? You know, maybe not before you, but at least the same speed as you, right? Then they're going to definitely take that. Meowscarada, kind of the same thing. You know, it's grass, you know, which is, you know, it's not too bad of a typing to have. You know, fire, you know, is a good weakness to have right now. But I just don't think it's time for Meowscarada in this format. Maybe next format or when the next rotation is, this will get super popular. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. What else? I'm going to say this here, Mimikyu. I think this is like a control deck. I don't think anyone serious is going to play that deck, right? I don't think it's the best deck. Yeah, I'm not really going to say too much more about that. Snorlax, this one here, probably the same thing, right? It's not really too serious. Where to go here? I'm kind of all over the place, so I guess we can start doing some more of the Lost Zone. We'll start off with Goodra here. I want to put that in tier 3. So the thing is with Goodra, that holds it back, right? It's got a good attack and a good V-Star power, but the 2 problems, even though it is consistent, just like Lost Tina, right? The 2 problems it has is that it doesn't deal enough damage. 200 damage isn't enough damage in today's game, right? When there's so many other decks that can one hit KO, Pokemon, right? Like let's look at Lugia V Star, right? The single strike version, right? That can one hit KO pretty much everything in this deck, right? A Rolling Iron, sure, they reduce by 80, okay. Then what you get? What you do? You can use that V Star, power, right? Heal 200. Okay, guess what? They just do it again, right? And if they can just keep that pressure on, guess what? You're going to be running out of options, right? Same thing with Gardevoir, right? If you're playing against Gardevoir, right, and they're loading up that Zacian, they'll just put enough, damage or energy on it, even with that 80 reduction. So it's got 270 HP, so it's roughly got 350 HP. They'll do 360 damage, right? And just knock it out, right? Even with it, right? And that's the big problem with Gudra, is it just gets kind of ran over like that. United Wings, kind of the same thing, right, as Gudra in terms of damage potential. Sure, it might be consistent, right, but the Pokemon aren't bulky, and the damage capability can't one-shot a V-Star. So that's kind of why I put it into Tier 3. Next, Reggie's. It's too bad they don't have a Reggie Dark, because if they had a Reggie Dark, right, then I would probably put it a lot higher, right? It's got the fighting, right, the fighting type to hurt Arceus. It's got the lightning type to hit, to hit Lugia, right? But it doesn't have the dark type to hit Gardevoir and Mew. There is Regigigas for Mew, but you need to have a choice belt. It's just not as easy to I guess to switch into. Yeah, you have Switch Cart, but Scoop Up Net was way better, because then you had your abilities, right? You could reuse your abilities again. It's lost a lot of energies, right? Requires basic energy. I just don't see it being really good again. It'd be cool. I'd like to see, if somebody proved me wrong, then sure. That's awesome. And, that deck would be super, super cool to win. Zora, kind of same thing. Pretty neat, but what do you do against, Giratina, right? Doesn't have weakness. So, Tier 3. Dialga Magnezone, I'd probably put that in Tier 3 too. It's a very strong deck when it sets up, right? But, you do have to get to that stage 2, right? The Dialga can go down, pretty easily. It can take a while for things to get powered up, right? Popularity wise too, I don't think a whole lot of people will play it. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Dialga here, right? And that would be awesome to see, right? But I just don't think it will. Same reason why I'm going to put Tinglu in Tier 3, right? The advantage it has, it's good against Arceus, right? Because the fighting and its abilities, but just due to popularity wise, right? and then damage output, right? It just doesn't have enough damage to, 190. It just doesn't do enough, right? You can't even one hit KO like a basic V, with the exception of Mew, right? Or if it's weak to it. So that's why I'm putting it into tier 3. All right, now we're getting to the tough ones. More Sable Eye Radiant Charizard, I'll put into tier 3. It's highly susceptible to Iono, right? Somebody plays, and as well as a Lost City. Somebody plays Lost City, knocks out your Charizard's gone, and then you've lost a lot of damage output for the entire game, right? It's really that easy. It's a deck that puts all of its eggs into one basket. Sure, it's got the consistency of everything else, but of all the other Lost Box decks, but just due to that, and obviously, Path to the Peak shuts that down, so, as well, it's going to go into tier 3. Now we're really getting down to it. Arceus Regidrago, tier 3 as well. I'm not really too sure if Regidrago's time is like right now. I thought, my list on my channel here, back when it was in the Crown Zenith format, and the Silver Tempest format, I thought my list could have went toe to toe with Lugia, but I just don't really see it now. I think the way that you have to play it is still kind of like a solo Regidrago. It doesn't have as much discarding right now. No quick ball, right? Sure, there's the Squawk ability, but it just doesn't really replace. Squawk ability is just not as good as Crobats, in my opinion. And the reason why is because you have to discard your hands, right? If I can play a Crobat, and this is what I really love, because I could Crobats and Greninja in the same turn, right? And then I'd most likely have my perfect board set up all in like turn 1. With Regidrago right now, for in the Paldea Evolved format, I just don't think it has that. Next format with the Obsidian Flames and Gita. Oh, Gita. I think Regidrago is definitely going to take off. So, super good card. But yeah, for now, tier 3. Speaking of tier 3, I'm going to put Gardevoir and Mewtwo Union there. Right? Lost City susceptible. It doesn't have the same horsepower as the regular Gardevoir. Right? It's more of like a late game deck. Popularity-wise, I don't think people will play it either. I think that it's going to have a hard time finishing games. It just doesn't have the aggression, which is kind of my style, as the other one here. With this, the fast Shining Arcana Gardevoir, the Zacian, right? And you kind of just have to build your deck around this, which I think is another tough thing. All right, I think I can confidently say that is it for these, for Don't Playlist in tier 3. Everything was looking pretty. Actually, I don't know. Mew VMAX, the double turbo version. right? I still think it can win games and it can do very well, but at the same time, it does lack, damage output and the ability to stop Spiritomb if it comes into play, right? It's not like the Fusion Strike version with, the Ice Cube and the Fusion Strike energies to actually get your abilities off, right? And for that reason, I'm going to move the Fusion Strike one into Tier 1. This deck here has been winning loads of events, right, all around the world. I think it's, been, winning a lot in the online scene as well as, I think it won the Singapore Championships there, right, against Lugia. This deck has just been dominant ever since its release back on Fusion Strike, about 1.5 years ago or so. Just over that, this deck has been super popular ever since it's released. Even last year at, the 2022 Worlds in London, right? Still a super popular deck. Maybe not this version, pardon me, but, Mew altogether is just super popular. So I think we'll put that into Tier 1. Gardevoir will put into Tier 1. I think Gardevoir is another really popular deck. It has, the consistency. It has the power, right? It's got the damage output, right? It's got pretty much everything that you would want in a deck, right? The only problem I can see, right, and this is what I noticed with my version, with my deck, which is Arceus, Duraludon, Umbreon, right, is if you can't get another Gardevoir EX set up after they KO your initial one, right? That's the biggest problem with Gardevoir, right? So, if it gets bossed or if it gets cross-switchered up there, right? And Lost City, it's gone. And if you're not set up, if you get a low hand size, you're just going to be draw passing for a few turns, which can give your opponent the upper hands. What else? Turbo Lost Box, I'm going to put into Tier 1 for its ability to, just the way that it responds to decks, right? And if it starts, teching in Galarian Zapdos V, right, for the Arceus matchup, right, then I think it's gonna do way better. It's got pretty much everything in there. The Dragonite for big damage. The Raikou for Lugia, right? Some are still teching in the Kyogre. As the late game part. The spread, right? Some are still playing the Drapion for the Mew, right? And then I guess you can play it for Guardy too, right? Cramorant, and Sableye are great against the Kirlias, right? I still think it's a pretty good deck. Not my deck. Not a deck that I would play, but I still think it's a pretty good deck and a pretty popular one, so it's going to be in Tier 1. Colorless Lugia. Colorless Lugia is not bad, right? But I think the big thing with Colorless Lugia is the damage potential. So that's why I'm going to put it into Tier 3. You got, the Snorlax in there. You got the Lugia itself, the Archeops, the Weirdeer, right? I just don't think that the damage potential is there, right? So that's why it's going in there. But the other one, that's going to go into Tier 1, right? This deck When it sets up, it's a force to be reckoned with. It can take pretty much any match. The Tyranitar there is absolutely nuts, right? Dealing, a max of 320 damage, right? Hitting Gardevoir and Mew for weakness, right? A lot have been playing the single prize Pokemon and Evital and Stonjourner, right? This has got the Urshifu there, right, to break Duraludon. It just pretty much knocks out anything in the entire, everything in the entire game. No questions asked. The only reason why I would see this deck not winning Worlds is just because of bad coin flips on Capturing Aroma and Mezagoza. So that's the only reason why I would see it not winning, right? Or having the potential to win. The others. Miraidon. Miraidon is interesting depending on how it's built. If it's the Regieleki version, if it's the, Fluffy Lightning Box version, right? It really depends on how it's built. It doesn't say here. But I think we can put that into probably tier 2. Right? And these tiers are not in any sort of order. Right? I'm just putting the decks. So I'm not saying that Arctina is necessarily better than Lugia Single Strike. Right? I'm just putting the decks there on which decks I think that can win. Right? But yeah, if Miraidon sets up, quickly, it does its thing, it can overwhelm the opponent and just take wins. Right? So that's why it's there. Rapid Strike, Urshifu, Inteleon. Right? I'm going to put that into tier 2 as well. It hits Arceus for weakness. It can chip damage against Gardevoir and Lost Box. Right? It can do that, versus Mew as well, right? You got to use the Inteleon more against the Mew, right? Its toughest matchup is probably Lugia, right? Just because of the damage capability of Lugia, but the Lugia player also has the Serena, so the Serena can heal the damage, which also makes it harder, right? So that's why I think it's worst matchup is probably Lugia. Chin-Pao, Baxcalibur. I'm going to put that into tier 2, right? I think it's, a pretty popular deck right now. Not as popular as Gardevoir, but still pretty popular. It has the damage to get there, right? But its weakness is obviously the Baxcalibur. Like, if you're not getting, 2 in play, or keeping 2 in play at all times, then you're definitely going to obviously lose the match. Some are playing Palkia for that, Star Portal, right? Just to get that energy back into play if you can't get a Baxcalibur. And then some are playing Arceus, right? So you can Starbirth and get those 2 cards needed to get that turn 2 Baxcalibur with a bunch of energy. So, if your opponent's kind of able to foil that, then that's why, it's in tier 2. The last 3 here, the last 3 are pretty interesting, right? I don't even know where to put these. I want to say between tier 1 and 2 for sure. They all have great capabilities. Aerodactyl, I think I'm going to put into tier 2. The Aerodactyl is really good against, because it makes your opponent so that they can't evolve, right? I'm pretty sure it's that they can't evolve, or they don't have any abilities. But yeah, I'm going to put that there. a good thing about the Aerodactyl is that it hits for weakness on pardon me, not Arceus, Arceus, right? It hits for weakness, and that is absolutely huge. Being able to one shot that. Oh yeah, no, the Aerodactyl. It says it gains an ability that has an effect. Your opponent's Pokemon V in play have no ability, so it's a great Mew counter, right? But I don't think Mew is going to be super popular, right? I still think it can win the event, but I don't think it's going to be as popular as Gardevoir, Arctina, or Lugia or Lost Box, right? So that's why I'm putting it down there too. Arc Flying Pikachu, right? I'm going to probably put into tier 1, right? I'm going to put it there because it hits Lugia for weakness. Can absolutely crush Lost Box, right? Because of the basics. Still can kind of do things against, Lost Tina there, right? And if you're playing Umbreon, then it's going to hurt Gardevoir as well. And Mew, right? Plus, it also, with Chien Pao and Miraidon there, that kind of gives it a little bit of a leg up on them, right? As it prevents their attacks. So I think it's a tier 1. Tier 1 deck. I don't think it's a really popular one, but I still think it's tier 1. And then Arceus Duraludon too. I'm also probably going to put into tier 1 here. Just for the, kind of that same reason. But the Duraludon is interesting because it can, kind of stop Lugia. Right, if you're able to G-Max Pulverization on the Urshifu before it evolves, then you can just lock a Duraludon in there for the whole game and then win. Obviously the same thing, with its ability Skyscraper against Mew, right? It makes it, pretty hard. The Duraludon in there against Gardevoir and Mew too. I just think it's a pretty good deck. So, and that's kind of it. I think a few decks that we're missing from here is the Palkia, the Palkia Chien Pao deck, right? I think that's a pretty popular one. I think it's the Curlia. I think it's got the Curlias in it. I would say that's maybe like a tier 1, tier 2, right? In between, maybe. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting deck. It can, obviously get that one hit KO factor. It's pretty consistent. It's got the consistency of Gardevoir with the Curlias. And then got the, the energy recovery and Star Portal, right? And Melanie, like the regular Palkia deck does. So, I think this is a pretty solid tier list. Right, this is kind of how I see it. Yeah, kind of let me know what you think. If you don't like it, obviously let me know why. Yeah, this is obviously Wednesday. I typically don't post on Wednesdays, but I'm trying to do that a little bit more, right? And I just wanted to give you an update on what my thoughts are going to win Worlds, right? Pretty much anything in Tier 1 I think will win Worlds. My top picks will be probably Fusion Mew, Single Strike Lugia, or an Arceus variant. Either Arc Pika, Arc Duraludon with Umbreon. Pika could have Umbreon too, or Arctina with potentially Umbreon. I think those 3 decks are the 3 decks that will, will win Worlds. I don't think Lost Box will. I don't think Gardevoir will. Right? Lugia, Mew, and Arceus. Those are my three choices. I'm thinking it's going to be an Arc variant. So, but yeah, there you go. Don't forget to check out Deck Profile Friday and Opening Sunday, as well as leave a like, comment, etc. Don't forget to be subscribed. Big giveaway at 250 subscribers as well. And yeah, there you go, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.